Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. This episode, we have Bulls sinking even lower than we thought they could. The Blackhawks getting ready to probably make a trade on the eve of the trade deadline. We've got the Bears getting ready for the NFL draft. And we have pitchers and catchers reporting for spring training. All of this and more on this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. But as always, before we start, we want to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. The Rockford Ice Hogs, the AHL minor league team of the Chicago Blackhawks, home of your future star Blackhawk players. Get to see them now before they become superstars. Only 90 minutes from the city limits in lovely Rockford, Illinois at the BMO Harris Bank Center with tickets at an affordable, family-friendly price of starting at just $7. You have next home game is Wednesday, February 24th versus the Milwaukee Admirals. Also, if you are a Blackhawks fan, which if you're listening to the show, you probably are, on Saturday, March 5th, if you're one of the first 2,500 fans at the Rockford Ice Hogs game against the Lake Erie Monsters, you will get a Scott Darling bobblehead. That is a Scott Darling bobblehead of your second favorite goalie of the Chicago Blackhawks. So make sure you check that out at icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. All right. As usual, we will have a cavalcade of fun things to talk about today. We are going to hit the Cubs and Sox a little tiny bit. Tiny bit. We are going to hit the Bears a little bit. We are going to talk about the centers in the NFL draft. And we're going to talk about the first mock draft that we did this year. It's still preliminary, still early on, haven't refined anything, but this is my first mock draft. We will talk about the Bulls a little bit more and the Blackhawks. So let's jump right in with our turd-tastic Chicago Bulls. I'm so angry and miserable at this team. It's disgusting. We talked ad nauseum before of what they could do, what they're going, and this is a team that's just absolutely tanking. They lost until their game the other night. They had lost 5 games in a row. They're in the 8th. I should double check this. Before that game, they were in the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference for the playoffs, which I think if me and a handful of the listeners joined a team and we were given a second NBA franchise in Chicago, we would be fighting for that playoff spot for the Eastern Conference. It's that bad. It's really bad. Look at some of the teams that aren't making it. Philadelphia, who's historically bad. That team's trying to lose. You've got Brooklyn, can't figure anything out. Milwaukee, that's just bumbling and stumbling all over themselves. The Knicks, which are a hot mess. Orlando, hot mess. Washington, they're an enigma. Detroit. And you've got the Bulls, who are coming up the rear. They're at 28-26 in 8th spot. So right now, if the playoffs were to start, first round against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not really where you want to be if you're the Chicago Bulls. You'd much rather be in that number 2 seed, where you would be playing Charlotte the first round at home and wouldn't have to play Cleveland until, theoretically, the Eastern Conference Final. But if you're the Bulls, you're 17-10 at home, which is not awful, but it's not great. but you're 11-16 on the road. You're 3-7 of your last 10. Prior to that last win, you had lost 5 in a row, and you're only 6-5 within your division, and 17-16 in the conference. Like, you can't play like that. It's just, I mean, you just lackluster games. But really, what I want to talk about this week is the NBA trade deadline has come and gone, over kaput, and I mean, thinking about it, you'd hope that the Bulls would make a trade because the team they have right now can't win an NBA title. Absolutely cannot. So you might as well build for the future. Try to get rid of some expiring contracts, get rid of some players that aren't going to fit your new system, aren't going to be there for the long haul, and try to bring in some younger players. Even if they're not the answer either, try to make some moves. See what you have, what you can get. That's your best route. But instead, you get Gar and Pax holding steady. Now I'm going to preface this saying, if there was just a situation where Gar and Pax couldn't find anybody to make a trade with that was a worthwhile trade, understandable. There's 30 teams in the NBA. They're all trying to get the best possible deal. I completely understand that and get it. But if you are... So, backtrack. If you're the Bulls and you can't make a deal, there's nothing good out there, then fine. All good to go. You just sit back and you let the deadline pass. And then when you come out with your press conference, you say things like, we looked into trades. The trade market wasn't where we thought it would be to best benefit this team. So we held pat. Hopefully we can do something in the offseason that will better advance the Bulls. Instead, what you have is Gar Forman coming out and saying that we didn't make any trades because Paul Gasol... Well, first he says we didn't even explore trades because they weren't going to trade anybody. And that was it. And he said, I guess even if you have Dr. J, you listen to trade rumors or trade suggestions, but you don't actively pursue them. First of all, if you're coming up with a stupid hypothetical situation, why do you think Dr. J? You had the best player in basketball history on your team just not that long ago. Why not say Michael Jordan? You don't trade Michael Jordan. But instead you say Dr. J. Whatever. And so you say, well, we didn't consider trading Paul Gasol because we see him as the core of our future and we want to re-sign him. He is 36 years old and has zero interest in playing in this system. He's refusing to play within the current system of a coach you just gave a 5-year contract to, and he's already said he's opting out of the deal that he already had with you to explore free agency. Why in the world are you not trading him and you're looking at him as the core of your future? That is so ridiculous. And then he said, we would like to bring Joe back. Meaning Joakim Noah. I love Joe. Joe has been a bright spot on this team for several years, but he can't stay healthy. He's not physically the person he was. If you could put this Joe's brain in the Joe's body of coming out of college, absolutely you take him. But that's not the guy you're getting. So they want to re-sign Joe. This is not the glory years. What? Bringing the gang back together. This team is hitting rock bottom. You have Taj Gibson who thinks that it's not really the player's fault. It's the team, the general managers put the wrong team together, and they don't know what to do because they had a defensive coach, but now they have an offensive coach, and they don't know what to do, so they just throw their hands up. Taj was a trading block. Get rid of Taj. If you can get rid of McDermott, you get rid of McDermott. If you can get rid of Gasol, you get rid of Gasol. If you trade pieces out because this team is no good. You've already said that you're going to give a 5-year deal, or you've already done a 5-year deal with your head coach. That's a done deal. You've given him 5 years. You're not going to fire him and be paying 3 coaches at the same time. It's not going to happen. So you might as well put together a team that is going to accentuate the system that your head coach is trying to run. Players that are going to buy in. Players that are able to do what he's trying to do. Instead, you're going to have these old veterans. Maybe you sign Paul Gasol to another contract and give him $20 million a year. Maybe that's what you do. Then you have old Paul Gasol and re-sign Joe. You have old Joe. You have unwilling Taj. You have immature Jimmy Butler. You have, I don't want to play because I have to walk PJ down his aisle at his wedding. Rose, who's just waiting for a max contract that's not going to be there in a couple years. That's what you want? That's what you want? Are you trying? Is your whole goal to try to make head coaches go crazy and lose their minds? If so, brilliant job. Bravo, bravo. This is just the ultimate just slap in the face to the fans, is you can't be honest enough to say, we couldn't find a good deal. We're just moving on. Instead, you just give us garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. And that's really, really frustrating as a fan of the Bulls. I don't really want to talk about anything else because it's just pointless. Oh, well, I guess one more thing is, in order to beat the Toronto Raptors, it took Doug McDermott pouring in 30 points. You're not going to see that every day. I've been hearing people saying that it's his coming out party. No, sorry, you could put that one back in the into the stall because it's not a coming out party. He had one good game amidst a lot of bad games. This is just a bad team, and I don't care what all the national writers say. Is the people that watch this team night in and night out, they know that this team is not going anywhere, regardless of Dunleavy coming back, regardless of people coming back from injury. This is not a team that can do anything. It's not going to make noise in the playoffs. Period. Let's talk Blackhawks quickly. Then we'll go to Bears. Then we'll talk NFL draft a little bit, and then a tiny bit about baseball, and we'll wrap this episode up. The Blackhawks, and we know what they are. We had Panarin had a hat trick the other day, helped beat the Rangers 5-3. He's just looking like he's going to be the Calder Cup winner, or Calder Trophy winner. Calder Trophy winner of Rookie of the Year. He's really phenomenal player. That's all there is to it. Artemi Panarin, this was a great fit. You had about 20 teams trying to sign him coming out of the KHL. You never know what you're going to get when that transition from KHL to NHL and vice versa, because this is a completely different league. But Artemi Panarin is a player, and he's really good, and the Blackhawks are lucky to have him because without him in the lineup, you have a lot of floundering on the scoring end of the Blackhawks, and with him, he elevates the play of Kane, and you have a really great second line, and it fills a lot of voids that you have elsewhere on in your forwards, in your top 4 lines. That's what happens. We had the Blackhawks visiting Obama, and it was interesting to watch. He said a lot of praise, spent a lot of time with them. It's nice to see him bring home, his hometown. Well, I guess, the city he lived in, his Chicago team, bring them in, talk about them. But you could totally tell listening to him, he's not really a hockey guy. But whatever, it's nice to see the president. And we are just barely over a, we're just barely over a week away from the NHL trade deadline. And that's the one that's going to be interesting because unlike the Bulls, the Blackhawks are really aggressive. And they're willing to flip young pieces, valuable pieces, mind you, for win-now pieces because they want to win as many cups in this window as possible. And they're not in the philosophy of, well, you know what, we'll take our chances this year with what we have and to save our pieces for future. Is no, they want to win now and then see what they can do in the future. That's just the way it works with this team. With that, you have two fairly decent sized needs for the Blackhawks. We've talked about this previously, is you need a top line winger to put on with Taves and Hossa when Hossa gets back. Andrew Shaw has done an all right job there, but really you want to get somebody in there that can elevate that top line and take Andrew Shaw the way he's been playing and the experience he's gained on that top line playing with Taves and Hossa and put it to make the third or the fourth line better and ultimately elevate everybody by bringing in more talent. So you want to bring in a winger or you want to bring in a top four defenseman because you're seeing a lot of poor defensive play with this team. I mean, you saw it today with Seabrook and Trevor Van Riemsdyk. They've had a lot of gaffes in their play recently, and I liked both players, but they've had a lot of gaffes. And today it was Seabrook trying to sneak into. He was trying to sneak into the offensive side of things and allowed a breakaway, which ended up being a goal in the outdoor game. But you would love to have a top four defenseman. Now, realistically, the odds of bringing in a top four defenseman and a top line winger to put on your top line or your line with Taves and Hossa and still keep them under the $3.5 million or so that you have in cap room this year. The odds of getting both done, slim and none, realistically. So you sort of have to make a choice. You do one or the other. And if you're me, I'm the general manager. I'm taking a top winger because I think you can get by with your defense. You tighten down the shifts. That third defensive pairing plays more sparingly. You play your top four a little more, rely on them a little more heavily, rely on Duncan Keith more heavily. That's what you do in the playoffs. You tighten that ship. You ride a hot hand. Hopefully Corey Crawford gets in the zone by then, and you need to be able to put up some points. What else? You're looking at a winger, and so who's available? You're hearing rumors of them bringing back Chris Versteeg. That's a really popular one. I hope not. He didn't play well with the Hawks last year when they had him. It was it just wasn't the right fit. And then if you're saying you were going to bring in a guy to put on the top line, I can't see him be on that top line with Taves and Hossa. That's just not really what I'm looking for if I'm the Blackhawks organization. Another name floating around is Jonathan Drouin. He's the left winger for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and several years ago he was the number 3 overall pick. A really talented guy, but he is in a bitter feud with with Tampa Bay. It's led to suspensions and him not showing up to games, and who knows where it's going to be. And it's a power play with a guy on an entry-level contract, and he really has zero leverage, but he's trying to exert a trade demand. And that's not really how things work in the NHL. So you wonder how Yzerman's going to respond to that. Just because, I mean, does he give in and trade him? Does he I mean, or does he just sit him and make him wait? Because if he doesn't play in a couple more games by the time when April comes around, he's not going to accrue that year of service, and he's not going to be able to hit his next contract till I think 2021 or whatever. It's another year he loses of service. So we'll see how that goes, but he's a really talented guy. Another name I'm hearing tossed around is Mikkel Boedker from the Coyotes. He's a guy who he's a really talented guy. He's has put up good numbers so far for a really bad Coyotes team. But again, they got a first round pick out of you last year for Antoine Vermette. So this is going to be another situation where you're going to have to give a first round for this guy too. Is that worth it to losing another first round draft pick? I mean, I guess if you win another cup, that's what you do. But it's going to be a steep price, and it's going to be, you're going to, I mean, so we shall see. And, that's a really high when the going rate typically for rental players is a second round pick, which you don't have. So either you have to give up some young talent that you don't want to give up, or first round draft pick that you really don't want to give up. But if he's a guy that you feel can move in to that top line and make you have a solid top line, solid second line, and move Shaw down to solidify another line, that's making you a very, very potent team going into the playoffs. So, the Blackhawks are going to do what the Blackhawks are going to do. And if you watch the Stadium Series game today outdoors in Minnesota, you saw the Blackhawks at their worst. You saw all of their holes be exploited in one fell swoop. You had them exploiting the Blackhawks' lapses in defense, where you have defenseman players jumping into the offensive end and creating some breakaways, over pursuing, not being physical enough. You have the lapses in offense where your focus is taking away Patrick Kane, and they took away time and they took away space from Patrick Kane. And as Patrick Kane goes, this Blackhawks team goes. So if you game plan to take him away and you don't turn the puck over, and you have really good goalie play by Devin Dubnyk, you wind up with a big victory on in your home turf. So that's really what you have. So we'll have more is next week when we have our show. It'll be right on the eve of the trade deadline. Maybe there'll be a trade by then, maybe not, but we'll be talking more. That's really all there is now. It was a little bit slow week last week for the Blackhawks. All right, let's talk about the Bears a little bit. This is the portion of the season when teams are able to put either the franchise or the transition tag on a player on their roster. And the reason that this is important for the Bears is Alshon Jeffrey. Alshon Jeffrey is the cog that makes this offense go. And without him, this offense struggles. With him, they're a much more potent offense. And considering that this is a second year with Ryan Pace trying to put together winning pieces, this coaching staff for the second year with the team, that you expect them to play better. And you're going to need a player like Alshon Jeffrey to help make that offense go. So you can't let him leave. Same thing with Denver with Von Miller. There's 32 teams in the league that want a Von Miller. And Denver is not going to let him leave. They're going to try to do a long-term contract, but they will have to do a franchise tag if they can't get it done. Same thing with the Bears are going to do with Alshon Jeffrey. If you're not familiar with the franchise tag or sparingly know what it means, or the transition tag is, it's a one-time, one-year offer that you're allowed to do as a team. You get one transition, you get one application of each one if you are an NFL team. So if you're the Bears, you can put the franchise tag on Alshon Jeffrey. And what that means is he gets the average of the top 5 salaries of that position for the next year. And it's a 1-year deal, and he's obligated to take it. And if you're the quarterback position, the franchise tag for next year is $19.6 million, defensive end 15.4, wide receiver 14.4. So if you were to put the franchise tag on Alshon Jeffrey, he would get, and you were not able to work on a long-term deal. The benefits of it is you can work on a long-term deal throughout the period. You have exclusive rights to do that. But if you don't get a deal done by the summertime, is he plays this 1 year under and gets paid $14.4 million. And if another team tries to sign him and makes him an offer, the Bears, A, get the right to match that contract, or B, if that team gets Alshon Jeffrey away, the Bears would receive that team's next 2 first-round draft picks. So it's really unlikely that a team signs away a player from the franchise tag. Now, the other option is the transition tag, and that's the average of the top 10 salaries of that position. So it's a little bit lower money, and for wide receiver, that would be $12 million. It'd be a $2.4 million cap savings by doing that. And it also gives you the option to match any contract that's offered, but if he signs somewhere else, you don't get any compensation for that. You just lose out. So it's a little bit risky move to save $2.4 million. And what happens is, historically, is when you use the transition tag, is teams will offer poison pill contracts with some sort of clause in it that makes it so the team, your team is not able to re-sign the player. So it's a little bit of a risky move, but I really expect Alshon Jeffrey to be back. They're going to either put a franchise tag on him, or they're going to sign him to a long-term extension. So we'll see how that goes. And the Bears also made a coaching move, is they hired Tulane head coach Curtis Johnson to be the wide receivers coach. So you've got somebody with head coaching experience stepping in on your assistant coaching staff. Also, the Bears are looking to hire Ben McDaniels, the younger brother of New England Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, to be on their offensive coaching staff. So you're looking at another McDaniels in there. But that's really it for the Bears news. This is really a slow period. You haven't been able to start free agency yet. You have some rumblings in the league with players that are getting cut. The Bears made the move and cut Jermon Bushrod, which was not a surprise to anybody. A, because he didn't play well and was set to make a lot of money. And also, he physically wasn't able to play. As rumor is he needed a shoulder surgery. So that's a situation that you don't want to be in, is have your left tackle that missed almost the whole season last year, not being able to play again the next year because of shoulder issues. It's just a bad spot to be in, and he was set to make millions and millions of dollars to be your left tackle. It's just a move that had to be made, and I've called it since the season ended that Jermon Bushrod's going to be cut. It was the biggest no-brainer that they had. And quickly looking at it, from a standpoint of salary cap. Sorry, I was blanking on that word for a second. Fumbled around there. Is with Jermon Bushrod gone, Jay Cutler is your biggest cap hit this year. Then Pernell McPhee, Lamar Houston, it would be you're looking at like a $3 to $4 million cap savings if you were to cut him, but he played well when once he started to get a little more healthy at the end of the year. I thought he played really well. I don't think you cut him. You've already got him under contract. You've got free agent, or you've got plenty of money. The next one is an interesting one. You have Martellus Bennett. Now, he's a piece you could trade. You don't even need to cut him. If you trade Martellus Bennett, you have yourself tons and tons of cap room. Like, it just, he's a guy that you could actually move and bring in like a actual trade value for him. He's actually a very, very good tight end. He's a good blocking tight end. He's a good pass catching tight end. And he still has a year left on his deal. Somebody's probably going to need to give him some money, but you could move him for a draft pick, and I feel like it would be like an addition by subtraction. You could bring back Zach Miller, you hope, for less money than you're paying Martellus Bennett. And Martellus Bennett is just a headache that you don't want to deal with anymore, especially if you're not going to be, a Super Bowl type team. So you move, as it stands right now after cutting Jermon Bushrod, you're the Bears and you have $60.4 million under the salary cap to play with. So you got $60.4 million. And if you were to trade Martellus Bennett, that goes up to $65.6 million. That's a lot of money, and there's a lot of things you can do to work on that. And next you have Eddie Royal. Eddie Royal was a fluke, I think, last year with his injuries. You're going to bring him around and keep him around. Another interesting one is Robbie Gould. Robbie had a rough year. I honestly, if I'm the Bears brass, I'm going to bring in another kicker to at least compete with him, at least. Because Robbie's going to make $4.1 million, and he had an awful year last year. So if you can bring in somebody and compete with him and he makes a lot less money, you could use that, $3.5 million elsewhere. Just a realization and realistic view of the NFL. Kevin White, you can't do anything with him. It costs way too much to cut him, and plus he's going to be a superstar. Matt Slauson, he's very good and well worth the $3.4 million he's going to make next year. Willie Young is another one who played really well at the end of last year, and he's going to be making $3.1 million. You can save about $2.5 million on your cap room if you get rid of him, but unless you have somebody that's better than him, I would keep him around, especially since you have, if you get rid of Bennett, $65 million under the cap. Now you have Antrell Roll. Antrell Roll there would be no dead money associated. He's scheduled to make $2.7 million. Bye-bye, Antrell Roll. Sorry. Kyle Fuller, you got to keep him. Kyle Long, Marquise Wilson, I think you keep. Eddie Goldman, you got to keep. Ego Ferguson, for the price, you keep. Pronis Grasu. Then you're just down to the lower tier players. So you trade Marty Bennett, you cut Antrell Roll, and you are at $67.9 million under the cap. $67.9 million under the cap. And you could even make more than that if you wanted to, if you were to cut Robbie Gould. You cut Robbie Gould, and that brings you up to $70.3 million. A lot of people will, complain and moan about saying that, but it's, life in the NFL, potentially. So the Bears have a ton of room to move around, and they've got a lot of draft picks this year. Granted, a lot of them are bottom heavy, a lot of 6th-round draft picks this year, but they have draft picks and they have room to grow. So let's quickly, I want to talk about the draft picks a little bit. If you are new to the show, what we do is between now, a couple weeks ago and the NFL draft is every week we go through one position a week where we talk about some of the top players that are going to be in the draft at that position and kind of highlight pros and cons and really scout them. I don't watch highlight reels of that player. I watch actual game film where I see every single play that they were on the field for the whole game, and I watch a couple games because I want to see good traits, bad traits, and anything I can see about that player. In previous weeks, we did running backs, fullbacks, wide receivers, defensive tackles, cornerbacks. This week luckily I chose it to be centers because there weren't that many, and I had a rough week this week. My aunt passed away, so it was didn't have a lot of time to do things. So luckily there was a short week. But next week we will be on the one that you guys want to hear about, quarterbacks. So let's quickly talk about the couple of centers that I looked at this week. First was Ryan Kelly, 6'4", 297 out of Alabama. Pros, he's got a nice size, 6'4", 300 pounds roughly. He's really quick. He's like lightning off the ball, especially for a guy that size. Really nice snaps. Everything really crisp. I mean, it looked just like perfect form, almost like it was a repeat on a loop of every snap, the same. Great snap. He really great first step. He's from that first step, basically from the snap to that first step, he could be a Pro Bowl caliber. That's how good he is. But once you go forward after that first step, after he's already snapped the ball, is he misses a lot of blocks. He doesn't have the best power to drive back large defensive tackles. He gives up on a lot of plays. He's not a hustler. He really has all the tools to be a good center at the NFL level, but he needs to develop that killer instinct, and he needs to have a better work ethic. It's just what he's doing now. He just doesn't have it in him, and he gives up too much, and he misses a lot of blocks and kind of throws. He olays blocks where he throws his arms out there and kind of lets the guy go by. It's for how physically talented he is, he should be a lot better. Next is Nick Martin out of Notre Dame, 6'4", 296. For pretty much height and weight dead ringer for Ryan Kelly from Alabama. But Nick Martin has really nice size. He as well has really nice snaps. Doesn't he's a hustler. Unlike Ryan Kelly, Nick Martin is a real hustler. He doesn't quit on blocks, and he just keeps going at it. He's not nearly quick off the snap as Ryan Kelly. I mean, I don't think anybody else is in college, but he's not nearly as quick, and he could be stronger. I think Nick Martin is the top center prospect in the draft. He's not as physically gifted as Ryan Kelly, but he's got a better attitude and works harder at his craft, and that's going to show come next level. You can't rely on talent alone. You have to have a good work ethic. Next is Jake Allen, 6'2", 297 out of Michigan State. He is a fiery competitor, again, a good snapper, compact with power, great on run blocking. Not great quickness, not the best pass blocker. Once he gets into that second level, he's not that great at finding a guy to block. He just sort of runs out there. He plays a little bit like a converted guard where he doesn't have that natural instinct to be a center, but he can do the job. I mean, best case scenario, this guy, if he works at it, could be like an Olin Kreutz type. Worst case scenario, he's just kind of sort of flops. But I think he could be a guy that you take in the mid rounds and works out well for you. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about, like I said, there was only a handful of guys that are top level picks. These are the guys that I figured would go in the first 4 rounds. Anybody else that's a center, I figured they're 5th, 6th, 7th, or undrafted guys, so I didn't really talk about them. Is Max Turk out of USC, 6'5", 285. He's got really nice technique, really good height. He doesn't quit on plays, but at 6'5", 285, that's like a tight end build. He's a little bit thin framed. He's already really tall, but he stands upright way too much. So he just doesn't keep that leverage. And at 6'5", you're going to need that leverage because you're going to have you're going to have like 6-foot guys, defensive tackles, that are raising up and driving you back. And if you're 6'5", you already have a hard time keeping that low center of balance and that leverage just by being tall. And if you stand upright, there's no way you're going to win in the NFL. But I like his play a lot, and I think if he can stay healthy and put on a little bit of weight, he could be a solid later round pickup. I see him as like a 4th rounder, maybe a 5th rounder. But I think he could be a good player in the NFL. He's just going to have to do some real work. And that's it for these players. Like I said, next week I'll do quarterbacks, and I think that'll be a little more exciting. But all in all, I still think this is a pretty weak draft class. There are a lot of guys that could be good players. They just have a lot of question marks around them. Typically you'll see a bunch of guys that I really like and project really well at the next level. And this year I have guys that could be good at the next level, but I have too many question marks about. This could be a nice draft for people that have late round picks, because there's going to be some guys that get picked later that are going to be way better in the NFL than some of the top picked guys. I think there's going to be a lot of busts in this draft. But with that, this is going to be the first week that I did a whole mock draft. So for the Bears, I went through, I use a site called first-pick.com, so firstpick.com. And what it is an NFL draft simulator, and it picks best pick, combines the best player available with the needs for all the other teams, and it has an artificial intelligence type thing, an algorithm that chooses for the other teams. And then I manually choose who's left. So I go through, and it's kind of gives me a little bit more realistic view of what other teams are going to pick, rather than some of these mock drafts where just you choose how it works. This, I don't have any say what other teams choose, and sometimes a guy that I really coveted gets drafted the pick or two before me. So with that, in the first round, the Bears have the number 11 pick in the first round, and I have Carson Wentz, the quarterback out of North Dakota State, fell to the Bears. Now, in a perfect world, do the Bears take a first-round quarterback? No. They have so many other needs. But the Bears are in a position that they want to pick the best player available, because that's how you get better, is you always, unless you have a surefire Hall of Famer in the prime of his career, you are not going to, you want to upgrade that position. The ultimate goal is to have a healthy, surefire lock Hall of Famer in his prime at every position. That's how you're gonna, guarantee you get a win. Because that doesn't even guarantee it either. But that's really what you want, is to have the best player at every position. So with the NFL draft, if you're picking out of need, you're going to overdraft guys, and you're going to end up with more busts than people that are choosing best player available. And with Carson Wentz, He was the highest rated player on my board as it stands right now. And I couldn't pass by. He was too good of a talent. You could always trade him if Jay Cutler, if you feel, has many more years left. You could trade a Carson Wentz and get 2 first-rounders maybe. But he's too good of a talent to pass up. And you could have a situation like Brett Favre when he retired, when he moved on to the Jets, that you have Aaron Rodgers backing him up. And that's the hope, is when Jay leaves, you're not left in a lurch. You have an NFL-ready quarterback, and that would be Carson Wentz. So in the second round, the 10th pick in the second round, I chose Kenny Clark, defensive tackle out of UCLA. He's a guy that if you listened to the show the other week when I talked about defensive tackles, he was a guy that I was pretty high on in a pretty weak defensive tackle pick or draft. I thought he was the best player available in that second round when the Bears chose. So I like Kenny Clark, defensive tackle out of UCLA. And if he's there, I think that's a steal in the second round. Third round, pick number 9 in the third round, I went with Cody Whitehair, the offensive guard out of Kansas State. If you get him, I feel like he is a plug-and-play player, steps right in, moves into that right guard spot, and solidifies it, makes the Bears instantly better on the interior offensive line because he's a really good player. And if he's there in the third round, that is a steal. Fourth round, pick number 8 in the fourth round, I have DJ White, cornerback out of Georgia Tech. You need another cornerback, even if you do sign Porter to a contract extension. You need another cornerback, and DJ White is, in this version of the mock, he's the best one available at that point. Round 5, pick number 11. This is a guy, if you're a Chicago sports fan, you may know because from Notre Dame, running back CJ Prosise. Do the Bears need another running back? Potentially. They let Matt Forte go. So would it hurt you to have a third running back? No. Do you have other options? Yes. But I like CJ Prosise. I think he, especially when he's not going to have to be the feature back. You're going to have Jeremy Langford to be the feature back, and Prosise and Kadeem Carey are taking up your 50% of the rest of the minutes, the rest of the snaps. So I like that pick. Round 6, pick number 10. I have Rashard Robinson, cornerback out of LSU. This is a steal if he's still available at that point. I don't care if you're like, why'd you drop 2 cornerbacks? I'm drafting best players available, and if you end up with 2 of these guys end up being studs, you can always, cut other guys. You don't have to keep the guys you had last year. Continuing in the 6th round, pick number 29, I have, now again, this is going to be, some of you guys will be angry at this pick, is Robert Aguayo from Florida State, a kicker. Yes, I drafted a kicker in the 6th round. 6th round, 29th pick. He's one of the last players picked in this draft, and there's only like 30-some guys left picked after that. But you pick him, he's probably the best kicker in the draft, and you lock him up. If Robbie Gould outperforms him, oh well, you wasted a 6th round draft pick. Totally do. But if he is able to replace Robbie Gould, then you've got yourself under contract for many years, for a couple of years, a good kicker who is making a lot less money than Robbie Gould, and that gives you another $3-some million in cap room to spend on somebody else. So don't hate me for drafting a kicker. Continuing in the 6th round, one of the Bears' 3 6th round draft picks, I have at pick 31 in the 6th round, James Bradbury, cornerback out of Samford. And again, I took another cornerback because you definitely need more defensive backs, and that's the best player available. I didn't want to shoehorn in somebody just because I need another position. I just felt like that was the best player available. And then in the 7th round, pick number 9 in the 7th round, I have KJ Dillon, the strong safety out of West Virginia. And again, he's a steal at this point. You need another safety. There you go. You got your safety. This leaves the Bears with a bunch of holes that will have to be filled in free agency based on this draft. You'll still need at least one inside linebacker, another edge rusher, and possibly another tackle and a tight end. But those are with $70 million in free agency. You can, you can address those needs. And ultimately, I mean, it's what you have as far as edge rushers. You can live with another year. It's not the highest of priorities, I don't think, but I feel like inside linebacker is definite one, and you can try to address that. And tackle, you can address that in free agency, and tight end you can address in free agency. So there you go. I have Carson Wentz, Kenny Clark, Cody Whitehair, DJ White, CJ Prosise, Rashard Robinson, Robert Aguayo, James Bradbury, and KJ Dillon. Next week we'll do another mock draft, and we will be talking about the quarterbacks in the NFL draft. And then lastly, I want to talk about pitchers and catchers reporting. Just quickly want to talk about this and what we're seeing. All of these baseball projections. I guess projections. They're talking about the Cubs being 100-game winners and the White Sox being 90-game winners and both winning their division, and that would be phenomenal. I mean, if you are, if the Cubs or the White Sox, you have to be a static 100-win team or 90-win team. Those are really lofty things to predict. And if you're the Cubs, you feel that that's actually a realistic goal. They won 97 games last year. You feel they improved based on they brought in another good pitcher, and they brought in an outfielder that's an improvement over Dexter Fowler. And also you have just the maturation of some of your rookie players. I mean, you have Chris Bryant, who's had a whole offseason to improve. You've got Schwarber, who's in the same boat. Javi Baez hopefully takes a next step. It's basically you have everybody taking a step up, hopefully. So the Cubs, if you have question marks on the team, do you take the best right fielder in baseball, arguably, and put him in center field and make that a hole? Or do you move one of your guys, probably Jorge Soler, and bring in a natural center fielder like Austin Jackson or Dexter Fowler and go that way? And then put Jason Hayward back in right field, and then you have a natural center fielder, arguably the best right fielder in the game, and then you just have one liability in the outfield. One option. And the other one is, how is the last couple spots on the rotation going to work themselves out? I mean, right now you're probably looking at Lester and Arrieta being your 1-2, however you flip the coin. Lackey being your number 3, Jason Hamill number 4, and then probably you have either Kyle Hendricks or Adam Warren being that number 5 spot. And if you have Jason Hamill, who has another awful second half of the season, you can move the other guy up and Jason Hamill down into the bullpen. But realistically, you could also move Trevor Cahill into the starting role and in the 5th spot too. So you do have options, but those are the big question marks other than health that you have if you're the Cubs. White Sox, they still have a few question marks. I mean, they need another outfielder, and they have, but there's options still out there. I mean, Dexter Fowler's still out there. Austin Jackson's still out there. There's Ian Desmond, who from the Nationals, who's still out there that could really benefit the White Sox and help solidify that infield for them. But they've made really good moves. And I thought they were a good team last year that just everything that could go wrong went wrong. And they've improved a lot of spots. They improved at second base. They improved at third base. Again, they have their top 3 starters could match up very well with most teams' top 3 starters, especially if Rodon addresses some of his control issues. There's not too many pitchers in baseball that are as good as Chris Sale, and Quintana. He's wins and losses are out the window because he has so many crappy run support for him. But he's a really good number 2, and if Rodon is able to improve on some of those issues of his control, he's got absolutely phenomenal stuff, and you've got a tough 1, 2, 3. It's just going to be, can some of the guys step up, and they're going to need a left-handed bat. That's the bottom line, is they have to bring in another left-handed bat with some pop in it to get the improvement and be able to compete at this level, for the division title. I mean, you have the reigning World Series champions in your division. You have the Detroit Tigers, who keep signing guys, and you feel like that eventually that they're not going to be able to bring in these top pieces, but they keep doing it, and they're going to be tough if everybody stays healthy. Cleveland still got a good pitching rotation, so that's always makes them tough. So there's a lot of question marks for the White Sox still, but I honestly feel that everything can't go wrong like it did last year, and you're going to have some things turn around. And I think that they're going to. I don't think they'll win the division, but I think they'll be over 500 next year, and at least be in the race going down to the end. But the Cubs, I feel, are just going to run away with that division. Not run away. They're going to win that division with a little bit of comfort level, because Pittsburgh can't be as good as they were last year, and the Cardinals just can't keep up that pace that they've had the last few years. They can't just keep losing guys and replacing them with equally good guys. That has to stop at some point. And they've tried to sign a few guys in the offseason and just came up short. That's got to hurt. So pitchers and catchers are reporting, and cannot wait to start seeing some spring training baseball. Would wish my job allowed me a little bit more time off, because I've always wanted to go to spring training, go out to Arizona and see some baseball. So that's really going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Thank you guys so much for listening. And as usual, if you guys have a question, comment, concern, I would love to talk about it on the air. And I feel like a jerk as I say that, and I actually had a comment that I didn't talk about on the air this week. Let me talk about it quickly right now. Is one of our listeners, he mentioned 4 free agents that he'd like the Bears to sign: Alden Smith, Richie Incognito, Trumaine Johnson, and I can't remember the last one, and my computer won't load. But those 4 guys, and I told them that I had, like, talent-wise, yeah, you would love to have Alden Smith and Richie Incognito, because they would bring a much improvement to both the offensive line and the defensive line if you were to bring both those guys aboard. But the issue is after the whole Ray McDonald issue last year, and that was their one bullet they had to fire in that department, because they're not the Dallas Cowboys, where they don't care what people say. This is a team that is a family-owned, and they're much more sensitive to these type of things, and they looked like fools last year with this. So there's no way that they're going to bring in either one of these guys. Alden Smith, too many problems. Richie Incognito, too many problems. There's just not going to do it. So talent-wise, fully agree. But realistically aside, Not going to happen. He also mentioned that he was worried that Ryan Pace was going to do a Chip Kelly impersonation by letting guys like Brandon Marshall and Matt Forte walk away for nothing. And I see what your point. I see the point that you're making on this. I really do. But Chip Kelly was a whole ego thing, and he was like, well, these guys just don't fit my system. Boom, done. Ryan Pace with Brandon Marshall, he wanted to get rid of all of the headaches that were on the team, as many as he could. And Brandon Marshall was becoming a headache, and he knew the talent level wasn't where it needed to be. And so what you need to win with less talent is, and you're not able to bring in more talent, is you have to have cohesion. And I feel like if you have Brandon Marshall, just like when you had Terrell Owens, if you have a Terrell Owens, just because you had Terrell Owens and he's a Hall of Fame level wide receiver, doesn't mean your team is better. Otherwise, the guy got run out of the league when he was still clearly physically able to play in the NFL from a talent perspective and a physical level. But 5 teams got rid of T.O. and Brandon Marshall has never been to the playoffs, and he's on his 4th team now. So that just says about Brandon Marshall is you don't necessarily become better, as he puts up numbers, but they don't help your team. So I honestly agree that was the way to go. You had to get rid of him. Matt Forte, it's still a head scratcher to me. I felt that you could have signed him and still made him be a top 10 paid running back and given him like a 2-year, $8 million deal, fit well within your budget to do the other things. And I thought it would have made you could have told him, listen, we're going to keep giving more carries to Langford and make him the feature back, but we want to use you a lot, and it'll preserve your career and lengthen it a little bit because you're not going to be the featured back. I think he would have gone for it, and I think the Bears would have been better off for it. But again, I'm not privy to that information, so hopefully it doesn't backfire on them. But it was sad to see Matt Forte go, so hopefully that doesn't backfire on us. But with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode, and if you guys have questions, hit me up at Swerski Sports on Twitter, facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Any of those ways, hit us up, and we will talk about your question on the air. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.